Hello and thanks for stopping by. This is Rocket Ranger for the NES and I'm playing from a cartridge on a retro USB AVS. This was a PC game that was released in a variety of systems and also on the NES, which is the one I'm a fan of. Originally this was released in 1988 on PCs and the NES version came in 1990, made by Kemco. This is an adventure game where you battle an invasion of Earth by the Lutonians, and it takes place in 1990. Even though all the images, all the costumes, and technology clearly represent the 1940s. The Lutonians were an enemy change that made it to this particular release on the NES. The original PC Classic basically made this a World War II adventure. This is a style and a character that's basically a take on the serial heroes from the 1930s or 40s that you'd see in front of Saturday movie matinees. It's the classic hero archetype with a jetpack. That's all we have here. It's similar to the character of the Rocketeer, which was a movie that came out around the same basic time as this game, I think within a year or two. I would describe this game as a cross between a strategy game and a handful of minigames, each with their own basic gameplay elements. I've beaten the game before, and I think it works well overall. The game basically runs in chapters, and as you continue to succeed, you're going to advance to new chapters. You have a map of the Earth, and you need to scour the planet to locate all the enemy bases and destroy them. You have spies that you can send out to locate these bases, but you have a limited number of spies, and limited time of course. You also have another limit, fuel. The main hook of this game is that you're a hero with a jetpack, the only person that seems to have one, and you use this pack to fly across the planet, if you have enough fuel. As you fail minigames, you're wasting fuel. If you wander around too many countries searching, you're wasting fuel. You can replace your fuel if you find the right minigames, but you can't find them sometimes, and you'll end up losing the game. There's plenty of text to read in this game, and that helps establish the setting, and then we begin. Each event, each chapter is going to have some sort of a paragraph to set the mood. As you start at the home base, and you have a few options. You can visit the war room, you can check your fuel, visit the rocket lab, or take off and try to locate enemy bases. Start with the war room. Basically, it's just you setting the stage. You talk to the director, and he gives you 5 spies. Now you automatically access the map area and can see where your spies currently are. Talking about spies, if they're flashing on the map, that means they have something to tell you. Select them and access their report. Either there's nothing there, and you can change their orders and move them, or possibly they'll tell you that they found a base, and hopefully infiltrated it. When they do, you now know where to fly. You have a target. So you're going to come back to this map constantly to move your spies around, and try to find all the different enemy bases. Your goal is to maximize their usage. After a particular country is clear, or they've identified a base or fuel depot, move them immediately. You can also access the fuel depot and you can move lunarium, this is your fuel, from the storage unit to your rocket pack. You probably want to just fill it up to start. It says there's a spot for a rocket ship as well, but you don't need to fill that up until later. As you start accruing fuel, you will start filling this up for your endgame later on. Fill your rocket pack right now, that's what gets you around the planet. Speaking of flying, you can just fly to any country and look around if you wanted to, but you don't have a lot of fuel. So you could easily be wasting your fuel. It's a gamble you're going to have to take from time to time once you get used to the gameplay. And I'm going to try to clarify this once more. You could load up all your fuel into your backpack and fly around to different countries looking for stuff. It's going to tell you how much each flight costs, but the truth is you don't have enough fuel to fly everywhere. That's what your spies are for, to help identify your target countries. You could easily spend all your fuel checking all different countries and never find anything. Especially more fuel. So it becomes a balance of searching and letting your spies search for you. The Rocket Lab is where you go to view all your game progress. It's pretty simple, it just tells you have to gather 5 rocket parts in the game, which is what you will naturally do as you find bases, and you have to gather 200 lunarium to get to the end game. You're going to get both of these eventually. Don't worry about it to start. You select takeoff to access the world map, and now, assuming you have enough fuel, which you should early game, you select the destination. I would just select the Zeppelin that's flying in the ocean and start the game. They've kidnapped your head scientist and his daughter. This is our first minigame, which is you just flying around and shooting rockets that are being launched at you from a Zeppelin. You'll need to get used to your gun, and how it shoots, and how you fly, and how you actually float across the screen. It's something you just have to get comfortable with. Your goal here is to quickly line yourself up with the incoming missiles and shoot them down, and it's going to take practice. I think you need to shoot down 5 or 6 before the Zeppelin flies across the screen and is gone. If you can do that, you will advance to the next part of the minigame, which is a closer position to the Zeppelin. In this screen, don't just shoot the Zeppelin. If you show up on this screen and press the fire button, I'm pretty sure you'll lose immediately. one shot will blow this Zeppelin up. So instead, what you need to do is fly to the bottom of the screen, and then you shoot well below the cockpit of the Zeppelin into this sky. That's the underside part of the Zeppelin on the right. Once you shoot and miss, adjust your position slowly upward to get your shot to barely hit the cockpit area. If you do this once, you should just win the level, which means you rescue the scientist and his daughter. They're going to get kidnapped again later on in the game, and you're going to repeat this minigame over and over again. There's of course more text to read to set the stage, and then you'll end up back at the base. You can move spies, or you can try to fly to a nearby country to investigate at this point. It's up to you. This is where it goes open-ended. There should be a base already exposed by one of your spies overseas, so you could fly to that location and trigger a minigame. That would be you flying to the other side of the planet, which costs a lot of fuel, so you might want to wait. I like to remove all my spies from overseas, and move them all to the left side of the map. Try to clear out that part of the globe first, and with any luck you're going to uncover at least a fuel depot that you can use to get more fuel. When you do fly overseas, you're going to want to investigate one or two random countries nearby your original target, because they probably don't cost too much more fuel. When you do get to a base, the basic minigame is going to be a flying dogfight. This is very common in this game. You just need to fly and get used to the timing of your shots. If you press the fire button as fast as possible, expect you're going to lose this game. This is a timing thing when you get to it. It's just you pressing the button once and watching where your fire goes, and then timing that fire over and over again. Auto fire, not going to work. It's all about figuring out the timing, and when you get into it, you just need to be patient, get in that rhythm, and you're going to be fine. Once you get the timing, these ships will start dropping like flies, and it's awesome. If you down enough enemy planes on this level, it's going to end the level. Then you get more text explaining how much of a hero you are, because of course there's lots of text in the game. And the first time I picked this up, and I hadn't played this for years, I got to this minigame, and I destroyed this level on the first try. It was fun to have the chops. It does get more difficult the more times you do the same level, however. Just be prepared. After a mission, any mission, you end up looking at your wrist computer, and you have two options. You can select a new destination if you want, or you can send an SOS. An SOS signal gets you back to your home base with no fuel, but it takes time off the game. Time is not exactly clear here. It does display at months at the top of the screen when you set your spies. If you do sit and wait on that screen too, it will eventually advance, but SOS, it's probably worth an SOS early in the game in particular, especially if you're overseas, because it will have less of an effect overall. If you find yourself overseas, or anytime you're in an area and there are multiple targets around you, it's probably best for your fuel economy to tackle one or two of these other targets while you're there. It's much less fuel than flying back to your home base and then flying out again. Eventually, you're going to start to get good with your spies, and you're going to start uncovering bases and fuel depots. Your job is to manage and use your spies as best you can to locate all the important items and basically clear the planet. Pay attention to how they're cover set and where they've already been. The map doesn't make it obvious for you at a glance where you've already checked. You might have to select a country and review it first to check and make sure it's already been infiltrated, so you don't waste putting a spy there a second time. You might get into a fist fight with a guard. That's another minigame. It's terribly clunky. Just press down on the gamepad or up to block. You press the gamepad in a direction, and at the same time you press A, and you'll punch. You can press up and A for an uppercut, down and A for a gut punch, and then of course left and right are across the body shots. Like I said, when you get here, it's clunky, it is, but it feels pretty awesome when you knock a guard out. There's also a minigame at night where you're flying and can shoot downwards to try and destroy the enemy. This is a level that's later in the game. This one's just all about aiming practice, and if you defeat enough enemies in the other zones, you won't have too much of a difficult time here. The Fuel Depot minigame is you shooting out the windows of an Aztec temple for some reason. The windows open, and the enemy shoots out in a pattern. Your job is to try to shoot the windows when they open. That's it. The Zeppelin fight, like I said, it's going to trigger again from time to time. The scientist will continue to get kidnapped with his daughter over and over, because apparently there's really poor base security. When you see the Zeppelin on the map, you should select it and replay the first minigame. Eventually, you keep going back and forth and move your spies around enough to uncover pretty much all the bases, and you find all the rocket parts you need and all the fuel depots. Once you have enough fuel and all the parts, back at your base, you fill up the ship, and then you launch your rocket and hit the last level. Basically, this is you flying to the moon for the finale. The final level is similar to the Aztec base level. You just dodge and shoot the enemies that appear. You're not shooting into windows, you're shooting at actual people. It's basically the same thing. You'll understand once you see it. And then, of course, you fight the end boss. There's not enough time in this video to show the whole game, but the game is fundamentally repeating 5 mini-games until you trigger the last fight. I have to say, although these are repetitive games, if you stick with it and get comfortable with the controls, it's a lot of fun. I remember playing early on and not getting very far, but after giving it enough time to understand how the shooting actually works, and once you start clearing levels, you're going to want to keep playing. When you wipe out a full wave of jets in front of you, it feels pretty good. This is one of those games I played when I was younger a lot, and I always thought this one was pretty good overall. Maybe it's not amazing or as action-packed as some of the other NES games, but it's definitely fun. And interesting enough, this one almost had a sequel 5 or 6 years back. Looked like the graphics were going to be pretty great, but it never happened. This isn't an expensive game by any means. I bought this one for I think just over $5, and it's pretty common to find out in the wild. Well, that's all I have for Rocket Ranger today for the NES. Thanks for stopping by to watch, and I'll catch you next time.